Greetings, happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin and all of you. We've got a jam-packed show here today. I'll tell you about in a second after I remind you there's still a couple of days left in July if you want to take advantage of Independence Day month that our friends at Hillsdale College are putting together. They are offering you an inspiring portrayal of Thomas Jefferson as he reflects on the meaning of the Declaration of Independence. In a letter that he wrote late in his life. You don't want to miss this. If you go and watch it at daceforhillsdale.com, they'll also send you a commemorative copy of the Declaration of Independence as well. You can't beat it. And this, of course, is from maybe the leader in the movement of the remnant of what's left in American universities that are not attempting to undo America. Go to daceforhillsdale.com, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com. There you can watch Hillsdale's educational, inspiring Thomas Jefferson video. But don't delay. This is there for a limited time here, and we're nearly to the end of July. Dace for Hillsdale, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com. All right, coming up on the show today, I want to kind of do a bit of a reset of things because I think the election has now been reset by what the Democrats have pulled off here in the last couple of weeks. And so back to front, we are going to look at where polling is at. I'm going to render my verdict on what to do with the poll jar from here after Todd's suggestion late last week. We're going to talk about the second most important election in this cycle next to the presidential, in my opinion, and that is the Kill 'Em All Amendment in Florida. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is going to join us a little bit later on as well. Speaking of the life issue, I want to debunk a lot of the talking points that you have been sold, and it's from our own side, by the way. And they're either just not honest or accurate. And that would vary by the person or the source. But this idea that standing up for life is what cost us in the 2022 midterms. In the end, guys, I just go with data. All right. I'm not afraid of data. I think I'm pretty confident. I've bet my soul on it that I worship the king of the universe. Therefore, I don't have to be afraid of data. Correct? Doesn't mean it's always going to tell me what I want it to say. Right. Right. But if it gives me answers I don't want, and I'll talk, that's one of the things we're going to talk about with Ron DeSantis, frankly, next hour. Okay. If it gives me conclusions that I don't want, then I have confidence, in my faith in the king of the universe, that if we're not getting the result that we want, we're the ones that are screwing up here, not him. Right? His word doesn't return void. So we're missing something. Right. And we need to course correct. So I'm not afraid of data at all. I don't care what the, conclusion is. I don't fear it. But in this case, what you were told about what happened in the last election cycle, we've done this before. I'll walk you through it again. It's just simply not true. And I think it's very important for understanding also what is unfolding now this election cycle. So we'll get into that with our good friend Bob Vander Plaats at the bottom of the hour. Before we get to Aaron's montage, real quick, I just want to say this. Had a great weekend, and we booked this months ago, had no idea when we booked this trip. We were plotting out 75 hard, and we plotted it out, Amy and I did, to get done with it right around my birthday weekend so we could use that to kind of celebrate getting through it, And we were like, what should we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? And then I'm like, I had so much fun when we went to the Christmas Story House in Cleveland last year, and we're all Christmas slaps. If you have any connection to the Deace family at all, at least my wing of it, you are a Christmas slap. Okay. And so I'm like, let's go. We haven't been to, Bronner's, which is the largest Christmas store in the world. We hadn't been there since, Anna was a little baby. So it's been well over 20 years. Let's go back, And plus Amy, she was born in Nuremberg, West Germany, spent the first few years of her life in Germany. Actually, she was fluent in German before English when she was a little kid. And so there's a lot of German connections there. So we just thought it'd be a nice, fun weekend. We had no idea that shortly before that, we started planning this out in the beginning of May. We had no idea that shortly before that, we were going to live through a 10-day period where there was a near assassination of one presidential candidate and an open coup conducted successfully, mind you, against the other. We had no idea what was going to transpire during this period of time leading up to this trip. And man, I really needed this getaway for a while. And you're sitting here in Gretchen Whitmer's Michigan. And I'm just going to tell you, it's nothing like the state that I grew up in. I mean, it's absolutely nothing. The people of Michigan have allowed Gretchen Whitmer to California their Michigan. Potholes everywhere. Pot everywhere. Everywhere. I think I told you guys last year I saw more marijuana signs in Michigan than I even saw in LA when I went out there. Well, Michigan has now surpassed California. It's the number one stoner state in the union. And yet, in the midst of this, is this little town of Frankenmuth with this not-so-little Christmas store that is open 361 days a year. Easter, Sunday, it's closed. Thanksgiving, it's closed. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, closed. Open every other day of the year. It's Christmas year-round. And its logo is Christ in all caps, Miss. And it's a store that has an incredible tale going back to when it was started in a basement in 1941. They're on the second generation of family who has run this. The only rainbows you see in this store, and it's like a 6-acre campus, the only rainbows you see in this store are the Wizard of Oz display when they're over the rainbow. Okay? And in the midst of Gretchen Whitmer's Michigan, here's this store in this little town that over 2 million people visit every year to come and celebrate and commemorate the end of 400 years of silence, broken and interrupted by the cry of a baby in the most humble of settings, literally born in a barn. The king of the universe. And that is declared everywhere in this store. You cannot avoid it, and it's on purpose. And the big takeaway I had coming out of there was this. It is dark right now. It has been darker. I mean, that humble baby born in that manger, 33 years later, we hung him up on a cross. We murdered God. That's pretty dark. It's dark right now. It's not that dark. But the thing that I found fascinating coming out of that weekend is that it dawned on me, you know what? Our problem isn't that there's too much darkness. The problem in the West is that there's too little light. That's the problem. I mean, if there's a fist fight and one side just won't throw any punches, they might be bigger, tougher, stronger than the other side, right? We don't know that. But since they won't punch back, we don't know that. And so you're left with the presumption that the side throwing the unanswered punches is just an overwhelming foe. I remember something my old boss, Ted Cruz, used to say during the 2016 campaign. You lose 100% of the fights that you don't fight. You lose 100% of them. Now, if you consider yourself a Christian as I do, there are lots of ways to fight. Sometimes you do fight by laying your own life down, right? Sometimes you do that. Sometimes you do fight by suffering. In fact, often you do. Sometimes you fight by standing up. Sometimes you fight by pushing back. We're not Muslims. We're Christians. And so that's why they know they can mock us at the Olympics, because our Lord calls us to die for sinners. And in Islam, as they learned in Paris just a few years ago with Charlie Hebdo, they murder infidels for mocking them. Totally different religion, not the same at all. Not the same God, not the same practices, nothing similar at all, nothing. Our problem is too little light. And I had this realization, and I log on Twitter and I see Elon Musk, of all people, posting on his site. Christianity is doomed if it's not more brave. Now, he's right and he's wrong. Okay? As much as he can understand, he is 100% correct. Now, for those of us who have been gifted by God's grace with more understanding, we know that Christianity cannot lose. Upon this rock, Christ has built his church, and not even the gates of hell prevail against it. There have been many, many cultures that thought they were going to be the end of Christianity. They all ended. Christianity is still here. Okay? But as much as his unregenerate mind can understand, he absolutely nailed it. Because what he's really saying is the broader understanding of what Christianity represents in a fallen world. As an antidote to evil, the evil that we all are born with, our own sin, and then the evil that we allow to manifest among us in a culture in any given era. If a culture is not given access to that light or rejects it, and both of those things have happened in our time, you will see the end of that culture. You will see the end of those things. And we're living through that now. Or as Francis Schaeffer said, your God is too small. It's not that this is overwhelming darkness. Folks, we are up against misfits. Absolute misfits. It's that our light isn't bright enough. We had too many pastors like Andy Stanley, this sweater-vested heretical mob, who finally saw something in the Olympic opening ceremonies that even they could not stomach, and then deleted the tweet 12 hours later when they realized they had done accidental pastoring. Now back to more heresy and rubbing your belly and making you comfortable. And it just gave me not an even greater commitment to making sure, at least with the time and platforms we have, to shine the light all the more. For there is a light shining in the darkness, and the darkness still has not overcome it. And with that, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by The Honeymoon. This is just a small sample of the gaslighting car wash the media Democrat industrial complex is putting Kamala Harris and half the country through. This is the cover of New York Magazine with Harris sitting on top of a coconut, surrounded by top Democrats looking up at her with the word Kamalot emblazoned across the cover. Polls are all over the place, many showing Harris suddenly very competitive in key swing states around the country after just weeks ago having a god-awful approval rating. Nowhere else is this gaslighting quite so acute than with this story from Semaphore, which is a Beltway news outlet nobody reads except lefties. Kamala Harris has spent her last 2 years as vice president repairing a difficult relationship with the national media, an investment that has paid off with her sudden ascent came with a wave of positive coverage. New from Max Tanny at Semaphore Media. So what's changed? Has Kamala Harris been slain in the spirit of the age? Nope.
Kamala!
Hello. Hi.
Hey there!
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
Yeah, this is the same Kamala Harris that just months ago a panel on CNN was calling on to resign because they thought she was a drag on Joe Biden.
How big a drag is Kamala Harris on the ticket?
I think she's a pretty big drag. I think she was arguably Biden's worst political decision of his presidency.
She really does struggle with her communication skills.
So worried, voters on all political stripes are so worried about Biden's age and whether he's going to last for 4 more years. Is it a problem when they're not very satisfied or reassured by the person who would succeed him?
That was in April. We told you this was coming. This gaslighting honeymoon is real, and it is spectacular. Moving on, we didn't have a near assassination or silent coup for the first time in weeks this weekend, so naturally France took it upon itself to mock the Last Supper painting by recreating it with drag queens during the opening ceremonies of the Summer Olympics. The backlash to the overt mockery of Christianity was such that a spokesperson for Paris 2024 had to issue the most tepid apology of the 21st century, saying, quote, "There was clearly never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think we tried to celebrate community tolerance. We believe this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we're, of course, really sorry." Learning Arabic today, today's phrase is, "It's all right, it's okay, the Muslims will be your boss someday."
لا بأس، لا بأس. سيكون المسلمون رئيسكم يوما ما.
Orwell update when you ask the AI chat boxes for ChatGPT, Facebook, and Snapchat, among others, if Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. Those chat boxes will tell you some variation on the theme of, no, Donald Trump was not nearly assassinated, and it was a big old hoax. Now, it's important to note that ChatGPT has a training cutoff date, we're told, of October of 2023, so information or news that happens after that time aren't included. But Google is now getting in on the Orwell, as we expect. When you type in the prompt akin to attempted assassination of TR, nothing regarding Donald Trump comes up in the search suggestions. ABC this week interviewed a team of local law enforcement assigned to Trump's security detail on July 13th. One SWAT member dropped this bombshell.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened. So I think that was probably a pivotal point where I started thinking things were wrong, because that never happened, and we had no communication with the Secret Service.
You had no communication with the Secret Service at all on that Saturday?
Not until after the shooting.
And by then?
It was too late.
Yeah, no wonder they're trying to memory hole this. And finally, the city of Paris, France, the night after mocking the Last Supper with a team of little antichrists, suffered a massive, embarrassing power outage, except for one place. One place that was apparently immune from said power outage is the Basilica Sacré-Cœur, a Catholic church and minor basilica in Paris dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Probably just a coincidence. And that's what happened while we were away.
If you are tired of giving your money to people who are all in for endless war, endless inflation, endless relentless assault on our values, etc., unfortunately, there is not much of a parallel economy. It's coming. It's just not much of it is here yet. Fortunately, though, one place where it is fully here is with one product we all need in this day and age, and that is our mobile phones. Make the switch today to our friends over at Patriot Mobile. They are the proud sponsors of Aaron's Montage today. And when you do, you can get a free month of service with My Name Steve as your offer code at patriotmobile.com/Steve. They'll make it as convenient for you as absolutely possible. They've got a fantastic customer service team. Keep your phone upgraded. Keep your number, change it, whichever you want to do. Use the offer code Steve and get a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, head over to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the offer code Steve to get a free month of service. Okay. So I was always going to vote for Trump, but after what happened on July the 13th, I'm now emotionally invested. Like I'm in now. Now it's not just, hey, we just can't afford for these people to win, but I'm largely just a bystander on whatever is going on here day to day. I'm now committed. I'm invested. Okay. Still have the Trump sign in my yard. All right. So I thought I packed a different T-shirt for my final day in Michigan. I ended up inadvertently packing my Trump shirt, so I just wore it. Okay, so I mean, I'm in. All right, but you have to understand what it means to have me on your team. I'm even going to be less of a jock sniffer when I'm on your team. And anybody that knows me knows this. I'm into winning. Right? What do I love, guys? Winning. What do I hate? Losing. I'm a very gracious winner. I'm a terrible loser. I hate losing. So to that end, I've never been the one of, let me just lie to myself before my favorite team plays the game about our chances. If anything, most of the time when my favorite teams have been facing a big game, you guys tend to see me be more pessimistic to avoid being let down at the end. I'm more wired that way, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm very frustrating to my fellow Lions fans, my fellow Michigan fans. I am just not a jock sniffer at all. Just not who I am. In fact, the more I'm inclined to emotionally be invested in the outcome now, the less jock sniffing I will do. Because now I'm taking it seriously. Now the outcome matters to me more than just an analysis or a technocratic, preference. But I am vested now. So let me share with you some things I'm concerned about. I think our side is way off message. Way off message since the Kamala insertion. Everywhere I look. In fact, I can't think of any place I would look and say, we're on message over here. I think we're just systemically off message. And I hate saying it's the most important election of our lifetimes almost as much as I hate hearing it. So I'm not going to say that again, but I'm going to speak tactically for a moment. From a messaging standpoint, this is the most important messaging election of our lifetimes. They're going to destroy us in ground game, and they always were. Now, we don't know if that matters. It may not anymore. Trump and his team, Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, and all those people, they might be right that elections are one up here now in the social media era. I don't know this. They might be right. I mean, I can't tell you, for example, on caucus night, how many reports I got from caucus captains around the country. There's no Trump captain here. There's no Trump sign here. He got 50% of the vote. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They might be right that you don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore. They might be. I don't know, okay? I just know that however much ground game still matters, and let's also be honest, we're referring to the Democrat turnout machine as a ground game now, since nothing substantive was done to stop it. Okay, Stop the Steal was a scam pack. No Krakens were released. Nothing substantively has been done outside of Georgia. Georgia's put some good policies in place, which is one of the main culprits when it comes to being able to trace and verify mail-in ballots and things of that nature. But systemically, by and large, nothing was done about this. Nothing's changed in Maricopa County. Nothing's changed in Wayne County, Michigan. In fact, Michigan's made it like a crime to even question ballots now. Nothing's changed in Philadelphia County. Okay, so systemically, nothing has changed since 2020. Nothing's been done about this. So that's a sunk cost now. Nothing can be done about it. The election is 14 weeks from tomorrow. Folks, I was wrong. We actually vote even earlier than I said. I thought Virginia was the first state on September 20th. It's actually Pennsylvania begins voting 49 days from today. Pennsylvania votes. Early voting starts in Pennsylvania, maybe the most pivotal state in this election, 49 days from today. So it's just too late. It wouldn't matter if Elon Musk gave Donald Trump $60 million. Apparently he's not giving him anything now. I don't know what the truth of the matter is there. Wouldn't matter if he gave him $100 million. It's too late to do anything about it now. All right. We're out on the field. The game has started. You're not changing your game plan, or you're not going to go. You can't sign free agents and make your roster better once the game kicks off. The teams that are on the field are on the field. You see what I'm trying to say? So it is what it is at this point. Okay. Now, it may not matter if we can dominate up here. I'm open to the possibility, based on what I've seen Trump do in this primary cycle, where he won it on the basis of being indicted and just dominating news cycles without doing almost any of the campaigning we saw him do in 2015, 2016. I am open to the fact that in the social media era, where we just saw them do a Thanos snap on March 16, 2020 and get us all to agree to shut our entire ways of life down without any legislation passed or, no petition signed. You know what I'm saying? It is entirely possible that these things are decided up here at the meta level now. We're going to learn that. And frankly, I'm hoping they're right about that, because if they're not, I'm just hoping they're right about that, and we're going to leave it at that, okay? But that means we've got to dominate up here at the messaging level, and we are just off message right now. Forget about their media. When you look at our media, I just want to, everything I'm going to look at their media and polling later in the show, okay? For right now, I just want to look at our side, okay? When you look at our side, and you guys who listen to this show, you've got way more time to consume other righty media than the three of us do, okay? And all we typically see is what gets shown to us in our Twitter feeds, because of the amount of time it takes to put shows like this together. We don't have time to consume everything that you guys do, okay? So correct me if I'm wrong, but when you guys look at our own media, does it look like Donald Trump was nearly assassinated?
Nope.
Just like 2 weeks ago. Does it look like that? We should have been milking that to the point of it being obnoxious. To the point that we were even looking at ourselves and saying, okay, are we going too far? You see what I'm saying? Because the number one obstacle we have is we have to convince, and I'll walk you through this more in the next segment, but we have to convince a very narrow sliver of independents that Donald Trump is more presidential than they thought that he was before. That's really the entire election. We're back to this being a referendum on Trump again. Kamala Harris cannot win the election, but Donald Trump could lose it. And we could lose if we're this far off message. Like I got up yesterday and I see all this stuff on righty Twitter. Everybody is responding to if the Democrats say JD Vance is weird, and then here's like a drag queen. And I thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. And then I find out this morning that this is all in response to Grabian did a study. Great website, by the way, did a study, and they found like almost this entire narrative is driven by CNN and MSNBC. How many normie voters are watching CNN and MSNBC, guys? What do you think the answer is?
Few.
Very few. Like zero would be the answer. Okay. So that means we are wasting valuable time. I just told you we're going to start voting in 49 days in maybe the most important state in the entire race. We're wasting valuable time responding to a narrative that is just not relevant to the people whose minds we need to change. You see what I'm saying? People don't vote on the vice president ever. Okay. If Dan Quayle can't cost you an election, then no vice presidential can. Okay. They don't vote on that. No one cares. Most people still outside of our base don't know what a J.D. Vance is. Okay? This is all just a waste of time. Trump at his last rally, and there's not enough of those, frankly. He's spending time talking about Biden still and his golf. Why? We're off message. guys. So what would be the message if I were in charge? I absolutely would not take Kamala Harris seriously on any level. Under the surface, I would, in terms of preparing for fortification efforts and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? But the stuff people see up here, she's a clown. And I'd continue to treat her as such. I mean, cringy Kamala should have been the nickname right out of the gate. In 2016, it would have been, but, you know, we've kind of got Vegas Elvis now and not pelvis Elvis, you know, and time comes for everyone. No one's a perpetual star, right? Everybody fades. Joe Montana's still not throwing touchdowns for the 49ers, right? Okay, but we kind of have, you know, glory, glory, hallelujah Elvis is kind of our standard bearer right now, not the pelvis Elvis. Okay, so cool, all right. But, and so it's not as quick as he used to be, but it should have been cringy Kamala from the very beginning. It's got alliteration. It perfectly brands her. It's exactly what normies thought about her 7 days ago, right? Thought she was cringy. Aaron did a masterful job in his montage of laying out what their own media was saying about her just 10 minutes ago, okay? I wouldn't debate issues with her. I'd make her the issue. She's the issue. I would never allow them. See, they're trying to make it seem like she's at something serious right now. She's not. If you accept their premise that she could actually be president, if you accept that premise, well, Steve, she could be president. She's their nominee. That's not. If you're thinking that way, this is a blood sport and you're just not cut out for it. And I would consider maybe running for library board. Fair? Again, doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It means that you're just not, this level of fourth generation warfare is just beyond you. And you're just not going to be able to grasp it and get out of our way. Those of us who do. Okay.
You're really over the target on that one. By the way.
If you allow them to, if you accept their premise, even criticizing it, if you accept their premise that she could seriously be president, you are greatly enhancing the odds she will be. You cannot let that thought enter into the normies' minds at all. They thought she was a joke a week ago. Keep treating her as such. She's a joke. It's not serious. No one takes her seriously. Do not let it get planted in anyone's minds that Montel Williams' side piece could be president. Well, Steve, women don't want to. The women who weren't going to vote for us don't want to hear that. You know who's actually tougher on women than even we are? The women who might vote for us. The married women. If the brothers aren't going to be flipping, that's done. That was never happening. So turn that crap off when Fox tells you that. That was never happening. Okay? We're back to where, you know what? If Donald Trump wins married white women by 5 points instead of 4 in 2020, he wins every battleground state that he lost. Because there's not a high concentration of black voters in most battleground states. In fact, the top 10 states for black, in terms of black population, 6 of those are states Republicans or Democrats could not even win or lose on either end if they tried. But guess what exists in every battleground state and in every state? Married white women do, in every single state. And they're going to be absolutely disgusted that this potential homewrecker basically slept her way to the presidency. While they're out here, you know, trying to Proverbs 31 their way with a full-time job or plus being a stay-at-home mom on top of everything else. Play that up. She's a joke. This also plays to our candidates' strengths. If there's one thing we can usually keep them on message, it's a troll. On the other stuff, it's just like, okay, but when it comes to trolling, dude is a Jedi master. Do not take her seriously on any level at all. None. This isn't a serious election. They just disenfranchised tens of millions of their own voters. They're not serious. They're not serious about democracy. They're not serious about issues. Nothing. This is a clown show, banana republic, Venezuela level stuff, and we ought to be talking like that. Do not let the normies for a moment contemplate she could be president of the United States. If you do, the odds we're all going to be sitting here opening veins on November 6th greatly increase. We need to treat her don't play clips like Aaron just did, pointing out they knew who she was a week ago, and then accept their gaslighting premise. No, we're going to continue to treat her like we did a week ago, like you did. She's not real. This can't happen. It can't. The American people cannot permit this to occur. And if you accept the premise that they might, they just might. between ineffective national leadership on too many fronts, and then you have a Republican Party who doesn't respect that ineffective leadership on a national level and knows they can just roll it whenever they want. So they went ahead and watered down whatever was left of, the pro-life issue in the party platform in this last convention. I know there's a lot of demoralizing happening right now on the pro-life side, which was just inconceivable from this time 2 years ago in the aftermath of overturning Roe versus Wade. To think that 2 years later you'd be sitting here thinking we have actually less momentum than maybe we've ever had. And that's something we're to talk to Governor Ron DeSantis about here at the top of next hour as well. Because if you think you've got little street cred right now as a pro-lifer, lose that amendment in Florida and you're out, like generationally out, like nowhere to go after that. Like it's like it's like 1975. You're a non-entity if we lose that one. Thankfully, though, there are places and causes like our friends at Preborn that they understand that ultimately this is a heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul battle with the spirit of the age for both the moms and then for their babies. Okay, and so they go for grace and truth. They confront mom with the realization of the truth that she's carrying a live being in her belly there with an ultrasound that costs us $28. Even with Biden inflation, most of us can still afford that. And then when mom hopefully chooses life, they're there with the grace to then provide her the support mechanism and system she needs. Let's face it, most of the time it's a woman who doesn't have that support mechanism that's considering out of fear murdering her kid. It's not the woman who does. Okay, so if you're like, why am I giving money to the Republican Party anymore to do nothing on this issue, then give it to Preborn instead. Plus, this one's tax deductible. Not only will it actually be used effectively and maybe actually save a baby, but you'll also get a tax deduction for it. You'll get nothing out of giving it to the Republican Party, and you'll be taxed for it. So go to preborn.com/Steve to make that donation today. Preborn.com/Steve, or dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone at preborn.com/Steve. We have worked with them to help save tens of thousands of babies the last couple of years. Let's save tens of thousands more here at The Blaze at preborn.com/Steve. Bob Vander Plaats, good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really well. Good to be here.
Was that too critical or negative of an assessment of the current situation, or was it pretty much on point?
I think it's pretty accurate. Pretty fair assessment. That being said, let me give you something about Iowa today. Mm-hmm. The heartbeat bill takes effect today. Mm-hmm. And that goes of 51 and a half years of people persevering, doing due diligence, trying to promote pro-life policy. But thank goodness we have a pro-life governor. We have more and more of a pro-life legislature, and the pro-life community seems to be unified in mission to save as many babies as they can, and they will not stop until the gold standard is realized of conception to natural death. So praise God.
Refresh our audience's memory, and absolutely praise God for that. Refresh our audience's memory. When was our pro-life bill originally signed by Governor Reynolds here in Iowa?
It was in 2018, I believe, when she was up for re-election.
So she was up for re-election in an unfavorable cycle.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Republicans were losing 40-plus House seats nationwide in 2018.
Let me back it up. 2018, when she was not really appointing governor, but she assumed the governorship because Terry Branstad went to China.
Yep.
But she was running for election in 2018. As a matter of fact, her third debate against Fred Hubbell, who not only was her Democrat gubernatorial candidate, but he was the chair of Planned Parenthood for the entire state of Iowa. Mm-hmm. He was Planned Parenthood. He funded them. He's a big businessman. He was leading Kim Reynolds by 3 points. And in the third debate, she said, my line in the sand is the sanctity of human life. And Iowans elected her by 3 points. She didn't lose by 3. She doubled down on it as governor after she won election. And then she was up for re-election in 2022 with all this pro-life mantra around her. Mm-hmm. She wins in a landslide. I think it's by 19 points.
So she signs the bill into law when she's an incumbent, but she's not been elected by the people.
Right.
So she's kind of a pseudo incumbent. She doesn't have the full benefits of incumbency, right? Okay.
Right.
And it's a very unfavorable cycle to Republicans nationwide. I just mentioned a minute ago, Republicans lost over 40 House seats that cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in the midst of that, and in this unpopular cycle, she holds firm on that issue, gets elected, then when this issue again becomes a cause celeb, especially with the overturning of Roe in the summer of 2022, she goes out there 5 months later and wins one of the largest margins of victory in Iowa gubernatorial history.
She did, and she won. If people recall, she won and was predicted to be the red wave by a landslide, but the country didn't experience a red wave.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, they said, was the abortion issue.
Mm-hmm.
But her, Governor Ron DeSantis, they won in landslides, holding on to the sanctity of human life. More than that, she really, I think, put salt into the wound, kicked sand into their eyes when she signed the heartbeat bill. You'll recall this at our leadership summit.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the family leader leadership summit where people say these are these radical
here's
right-wing
the Christian nationalists.
Christians.
That's the new term. Yeah.
Yeah, this is who they are.
Yep.
And she signs it at our leadership summit. I think what Kim Reynolds has demonstrated, I think a guy like Ron DeSantis has demonstrated, and others, the voters want to know, can I trust you on probably the most fundamental issue of our time, and that is the sanctity of human life? Can I trust you? Or are you willing to negotiate? You willing to compromise? You willing to do whatever it is? When they trust you, they'll think, now I can trust you with the tax break for the blue bicycle, or anything else it might be, eminent domain or private school for kids, whatever it is. But if we can't trust you on the sanctity of human life, how do we trust you on anything else?
Now, I'm bringing this up again because, like I told you guys last segment, I want to win. And I am concerned with where things are at right this moment. It has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. I don't believe the gaslighting works. I don't think most normie voters suddenly think she's not the queen of cringe. Okay? I'm concerned that we're not on that message and that we're reacting to their gaslighting and we are off message. Okay? And that we are reading into what happened. We're either ignoring the 2022 midterms, or we are acting as if something occurred that did not. So I want to show the audience this. I've showed it to the audience many, many times since 2022. Okay? But our friend and colleague Daniel Horowitz just reset this. And he mentions that the GOP challenge in one chart from the 2022 exits. We turned out even more of our base than the Dems did. Now, Trump told you guys that the pro-lifers stayed home because they were content with winning Roe v. Wade. This is just not true. Okay. It was a +3 electorate for Republicans. We outperformed, even with the ballot harvesting system in place. We outperformed Republicans in that Democrats in that midterm elections by 3 points. Okay. Here's where we lost. There's a 2-point difference of independence. And if you look at all these races where the polls were all wrong in undersampling Democrats and all the most decisive races, all in one direction. Hell of a coincidence. I keep pointing out that is, okay? But we lost independence for the third election in a row. Now, we made up ground this time. It was closer than it was in 2018 and 2020, but we still lost them by a couple of points. Daniel is correct. That is the entire sliver of the electorate right there, unless with one exception. And that is if Trump is capable of performing with married white women at the level most Republicans have been before him. If he can do that, now he's won them his 2 presidential runs, but he's underperformed where Republicans traditionally are with married white women. For example, if Trump had won married white women by 5 points in 2020 instead of 4, he'd have won every single battleground state.
He's president.
That he lost every one of them. Well, Steve, what about minority voters? Again, I keep pointing out it's where people are. Okay. The reality is the majority of black voters in America are in states either Republicans cannot lose, like Mississippi, or Republicans cannot win, okay, like California, for example. There are only, of the top 12 states for a black voter population, only 4 of them, of those 12, would be considered a battleground state. Do you know what demographic exists in every single state, battleground or not? Married white women do. And a ton of them. And there's more married white women than black voters, even though we're obsessed with this, like, let's win this 1, 2 or 2 point sliver of 12% of the electorate because boomers need to convince themselves one more time before they go 6 feet under that they really weren't racist all these years. And so this talking point just soars in terms of generating ratings and clicks. It's a loser electorally. All right, we need to win independent voters and perform better with married white women. Do those two things, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they hand Kamala Harris a Nobel Prize, the Congressional Medal of Honor, a Purple Heart, okay, a husband with a T level. It doesn't matter what they hand her between now and Election Day, 14 weeks from tomorrow. She's going to lose. And not just lose the Electoral College, Trump will be the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. Like that, he'll win convincingly. But that's always what this has been about, not many of the talking points that we are selling ourselves. And I am concerned that a lot of the things that we throw out there as chum for are actually run counter to what would win for us. The life issue did not cost Republicans anything in the 2022 midterms. Nothing. All the Republican governors that were pro-life won. This is like the only Republican issue that Mike DeWine is a Republican is on this issue. He's literally a Democrat on every other issue except this one issue, okay? He won convincingly. No Republican was punished for being pro-life in 2022. This never happened. It never occurred. And all the pro-life governors actually won. Those are facts. Now, you can go find your favorite influencer who's getting paid by people to tell you something different. It's not true. That's the data. It didn't cost us anything in 2022. It is possible that not being pro-life now might cost us 1, 2, or 3 points of people that should have been voting for us in November. That is true. That might happen. Let's hope that doesn't occur. But it could, Bob.
Take a look at the two demographics you just mentioned. Married white women typically have children.
Yep.
And when they typically have children, they're most concerned about their children. And they see the crazy that's taking place in this culture as well. They're seeing the Last Supper with drag queen in the opening ceremonies in France. They're seeing Washington, D.C., where they're raising the Palestinian flag and replacing it with the American. They see the crazy, and they're out there, they're to protect their children. They just want to know, will you champion, can I trust you on championing a culture of life versus a culture of death? And independence, the same thing is, can I trust you on this foundational issue? Or are you trying to nuance it in such a way that I can't trust you on anything else anyhow? And Steve, there's a big fan of yours I met in Washington, D.C. She's out of the state of Maine. She's a state legislator. Her name is Reagan Paul, I believe. But what she understands is why she believes what she believes, and that's how she responds to it. We need more politicians, in particular on this issue, understand why we believe what we believe, and then they'll be able to effectively message it. But right now, we're all trying to figure out, how do we message something? We don't even know why we believe what we believe. Message what you believe, and you'll go a whole lot better for you with the electorate.
Correct. Because here's the thing. They didn't cancel all their ads that you hate single women that want to kill their kids because you took it out of the platform. You're still going to get hit with all of those attacks.
And you appointed 3 justices that overturned Roe v. Wade.
And now what you risk, again, is you risk leaving a couple of points of those people whom you earned their votes with what you did as president. And you risk leaving a couple of points of those people at home because of what you have said since then. While taking on the full brunt of blowback from them. It's a lost leader. I want to win. I think we have to win, okay? But this is the cost of having me on your team. I am not going to tell you what you want to hear, and I'm not a jock sniffer. Never have been, never will be. You want me on your team? I'm on the team. Sign in the yard, got the shirts, I'm on the team. But now I want to win, okay? And this is not how to win. And that is what I am concerned about.
And for us, it's not even that hard. It's not even that hard of a message. Go ahead, point out where Kamala Harris is on these issues. Abortion up to the time of birth. You don't need to have parental consent. Taxpayers pay for it. Point out all that stuff. But then let them know passionately that you'll be a leader that champions the culture of the sanctity of human life at every turn and at every stage. And I got to tell you what, you don't even have to get into the policy nuances of it. Just let them know that you'll champion a culture of life. And I think you'll see people run to you because they know what she represents. But do not waffle on that issue by running away from it. And that was my concern when they started pulling it out of the party platform. What you're showing there is you're waving the white flag. So what you said in your book about, don't attack what you don't intend to kill. It's like
which book Donald Trump endorsed, by the way.
We overturn Roe v. Wade. What's the next thing we do? Mm-hmm. We pull the sanctity of human life out of the platform. What is that? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever.
I'm sure you could find issue polling of independents who think heartbeat bills go too far and things of that nature. It's irrelevant. Here's why. it doesn't necessarily matter what an issue polls. What matters is what voters as an issue drive. That's what matters. For example, gun control is more popular than what we call constitutional carry when it's polled. But the people who vote on guns disproportionately are for constitutional carry. And that's why whenever the gun issue gets nationalized, it works against the Democratic Party, even though the polling is better for them than it is for us. Similarly, independents don't vote on abortion. They don't. If you're voting on abortion, then you're either Bob Vander Plaats or Elizabeth Warren, and there isn't an in-between.
And we already know.
Doesn't mean there aren't opinions in between. That's not what I said. Yeah. If you're voting on the issue, if that drove you to the polls, you're either Elizabeth Warren or you're Bob Vander Plaats.
And we already know which way we're voting. So it's not a deal. You're gonna win me over to Kamala at any time. You're not going to win Elizabeth over to Donald Trump at any point in time.
It's strictly an issue that turns out the core bases of either side. And swing voters largely do not care. And therefore, when you allow them to attack you relentlessly, while then watering down your message, you take on the full brunt of their blowback that they're feeding their base while minimizing what turnout you may get from your base. And that is a concern that I have.
So seize the craziness of the culture, speak into common sense and basic foundations and values, and it begins on the cornerstone of the sanctity of human life. I really believe that.
Gentlemen, I got about a minute. Todd, looks like you have something you want to say.
Well, I think it's even worse than missing this opportunity with this assassination attempt. It changed our hearts and minds in the moment. Well, to the degree that it opened up a door and was letting people listen in a new way. Well, then Trump and the Republicans have got to take advantage of that. And if they don't, and they don't quickly, that door may be shut even harder than it was before. And that's saying something. We're absolutely blowing it. I'm not shocked either.
Yeah, that's an evergreen tweet. We're absolutely blowing it. You could apply that to a lot of things these days. Here's the reality, and this is the mind-numbing reality for the last 8 years, is that winning is simple, but given the people at play here, we make it as hard as we possibly can. It is simple. What you just laid out in the first segment, Steve, about Kamala Harris and making sure that people don't take her seriously. And take the campaign seriously, absolutely. But in terms of actually the person, make sure you see that. That's a simple recipe for success. But given the players and personalities involved here, it is apparently not easy.
And Aaron, every election cycle, we talk about we will still defeat all the models of victory. I mean, and we do that every year.
Great stuff. Thank you, Bob.
Good to see you guys.
We're going to speak to one of those pro-life governors here in a few moments. Governor Ron DeSantis will join us because this is a must-win election in his state on the life issue. We're going to tell you about that and more here next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email us there, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and also TikTok. If you're a podcast listener, thank you so much for that. If you haven't done this yet, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of you who have, and then also make sure to hit subscribe, or if you tuned in on iTunes, you got to hit follow, and that way every time we do a new show, it will show up in your podcast feed every time, and we thank all of you that have done that for us as well. We want to thank the ministry at Focus on the Family. They have had for almost a half a century now. They have been a venerable voice in helping families to stay on the narrow road in times of chaos and tumult like we have right now. And they've earned decades of trusted, compassionate stories of redemption that they have played a part in, and also in sharing. And that's just one of the things that Jim Daly does on his podcast, where he wants to help you, connect you with the sound wisdom from the scriptures that you can apply to marriage, parenting, and family life in a way that is relatable, practical, and hopefully also genuinely interesting. You can get the podcast today at focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. Again, visit focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. One more time, that's focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. We are joined now by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis here on The Blaze. Governor, it is good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good. You know, we just launched our back to school sales tax holiday, which just told me that we got our kids going back to school in a couple of weeks. The summer's gone by very quickly. It has indeed. So this election's going by very quickly. Tomorrow is 14 weeks until we begin either election day, week, month, festival, until they figure out how many votes they need over there. And then we've got early voting that starts in only 49 days from today, if you can believe it, in Pennsylvania, in 49 days. There are two, I think, existentially important elections. One that everybody's focused on right now. I want to ask you about that here off the top. And then I want to get into one that I think more people need to focus on that's going on in your state. But let's start with the presidential election, Ron, and how you think this thing has kind of shifted now since the coup against Biden has been fully executed and Kamala Harris has taken over, something you predicted, I think, 2 years ago you thought would occur. So what do you think has changed now in the race? And if the former president called you up and said, Governor, give me a piece of advice, what would it be? Well, look, when Biden was running, it was obvious that he didn't have what it took to serve 4 more years. I mean, he can't even do the job now, but imagine him through 86. And the public increasingly agreed that was a non-starter. The media did their best to cover that up, but that debate really sealed Biden's fate. There was no way they were going to go to the voters in November with Biden in that basically vegetative state because they knew they were going to lose. Now, they were fine having Biden in that state if they thought Biden could win. So it's not the principle of it. It was just about how best can the left maintain control of political power. And so once that became apparent, it was just a matter of time before this happened. Now, the media led the charge to get Biden off the ticket. And they did it because they don't think he could win. I said before this even happened that as soon as you'd have a new candidate, it will be hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fawning press coverage. And boy, has that what we've seen with Kamala. And if there's one person we wanted to run against, it was Biden. But the next person we would choose would be Kamala. And yet they are turning her in or trying to turn her into some type of cultural phenomenon. This is a candidate who's been incredibly vapid throughout her political career. She says things like talks about the passage of time and all these like really weird phrases that she'll just repeat as if they have some deeper meaning. She is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the left. She supported all Biden's policies, and she has up to this point been pretty unpopular with the American people, but yet the media is trying to make this happen. They are trying to manufacture a Kamala phenomenon. And I guess the issue is like, I don't think that'll work because I think people get who she is or they will see it. But I will say this, the fact that it's such a short runway, that really helps them in this situation, because I think the media's just got to spin this for 100 days, convince enough people that she's an acceptable choice, and then hopefully drag her across the finish line in their estimation. Now, the way I view the election is very simple. Our task as Republicans is just to make it clear to the American people that Kamala is an unacceptable choice, that the people that love Trump are going to vote for him. Some of the people that may not like him, he's the safer choice than Kamala because she's more liberal than Biden. And who knows what she would do if she were ever actually given power in her own right. But that's really just got to be the focus. She's an unacceptable choice. You've seen the numbers, Steve, over the last probably year that 75% of Americans didn't want a replay of 2020. And the Democrats are making it not a replay. And so what we can't have are voters who are like, yeah, I kind of want a different candidate. She seems fine, so I'll vote with her. We cannot let that happen. We've got to go full bore and define her for who she is. She's a vapid, leftist San Francisco Democrat. Yeah, my fear is if we buy, and that's what I just said before you came on, Governor. My fear is if we treat her with the idea that this is a serious conversation on the issues and she should be taken seriously as a potential president, we're actually playing into their narrative. They need to establish the premise that she could be seen as president. I don't think we should buy into that on any level whatsoever. Normie voters didn't think she was a realistic president
president a week ago, and they know that she's not. I mean, they know that if they wanted the American people to see this was a Veep episode come to life, they just would have pushed Biden totally out of office and given her the benefit of incumbency. They know that they don't want the American people to see who she really is as president until they have to vote. What we need to do is never. I don't think we should accept the premise at all that there could be a President Kamala. That it's just beneath the dignity and worth of the American people that they're being asked to buy into this charade where they've nullified all these votes and now they're lying to you about somebody they told us a month ago was a drag on the ticket. I don't think we should treat her seriously at all. I think we should actually just make it look like she's so far out of the mainstream. It's just not even it's not even conceivable that the American people would fall for this canard.
Well, just remember when Biden announced that he was not going to run, Obama put out a statement calling for a thorough and open process because Obama himself knew Kamala did not have what it takes. And so he was hoping that they would be able to anoint a candidate from outside the Harris-Biden administration, somebody that the media could more plausibly hold up as like a breath of fresh air. And again, all these Democrats are problematic. They would all be lousy. But I think the plausibility of the media doing that would have been easier if it was a non-Harris candidate. So even Obama recognized that early. But I think she just got so many people to line up for her that people have basically fallen in line. Now, I still think if she face plants between now and the convention, anything's possible. But I think each day that goes by with the fawning coverage where she's in scripted environments makes it more likely that she's going to definitely be the candidate. But it is a very implausible thing what the media is trying to do. They're trying to make fetch happen. They're trying to act like there's this groundswell of support. Someone was even passing along a video from the Villages retirement community down in Central Florida. So this is a place that I know well. And there were probably a couple hundred golf carts and seniors on their golf carts campaigning for Harris. I don't know if they had like a procession or something, and people were trying to say that was a sign that there's like all this energy for Harris, even down in Florida. And I could just tell you, in that community, a couple hundred golf carts, that's a small fraction of the golf carts who descend on the first tee box every morning at one of their many golf courses. And so this is all fake. It's all phony. And we just can't buy into the narrative. But I think it's just got to be very tough about her being an unacceptable option. Because you think about it, even people that may not be hot on Trump, Harris is going to be a bridge too far for them if we frame it properly.
Well, unfortunately, this brings us to what I think is the other most important election this cycle, and this is happening in your state. Because unfortunately, in the last couple of years, some edict has come down from on high that the pro-life issue is a bridge too far now for the Republican Party. And I just walked our audience through again the data from the 2022 midterms, this idea that pro-lifers stayed home after getting Roe v. Wade. We turned out Democrats, even with their, I guess we'll call it, turnout operation advantage that they have now. Okay, the electorate was +3 Republican. All of the pro-life governors, such as yourself, my governor, Kim Reynolds, who signed her heartbeat bill into law in 2018 and then won a tough reelect in a bad year for Republicans after doing that, and then got reelected by an even harder, a greater margin as you did in 2022. So the data does not indicate this yet. It's been largely, evicted from the party platform, wasn't mentioned at all at the convention we just had. And Republicans are seeing results in Michigan and Ohio in referendums, and they're running scared right now. And there's now a similar ballot initiative in your state for a constitutional amendment. And I am warning my audience that if you are concerned that pro-lifers have lost all their momentum since the overturning of Roe now, go to Florida and lose in an election where Trump's going to probably win by 6 to 10 points on Election Day in a state where Republicans have a 1 million voter registration advantage now, courtesy of, frankly, your efforts. And lose this initiative in your state. And if you think you've got no clout now in the Republican Party, we lose this one in Florida in November. I don't see any clout for the foreseeable future in the Republican Party. I think this is an absolute must-win for the pro-life movement. And that's the main reason we wanted to have you on today. So first start with that and set the scene for us, if you even if you agree with that kind of meta-analysis of the importance of this issue.
Well, what's being proposed in Florida is really a Chinese-style abortion regime. It would be as liberal or more liberal than California and New York. It eliminates entirely parental consent for minors having abortion. So as a parent, that'd be the one thing that they take away from you, even though that's a pretty doggone significant thing. Any other thing that a kid would want to do, you would have say in, but just not this. It would greenlight abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. It does not require a doctor to be involved in the decision. It says that you just need a, quote, healthcare provider, but that could be a clerk at Planned Parenthood. So you are going to see Florida would have the most extreme abortion regime anywhere in the country. And, you know, sometimes when you say that, there'll be people that are kind of on our side politically who will say, well, you know, there aren't late-term abortions. That doesn't happen. And that's just not true. It does happen. It is rare. It's probably less than 2% of all abortions nationwide, but the vast majority of those are purely elective abortions. And there's financial reasons for this. There's people that make money off it in a variety of different ways. So that would be the reality in the state of Florida. Now, clearly, if that were explained to everybody, that would not get 60% of the vote, which you do need 60% in Florida. And so part of the challenge on these ballot initiatives in Florida is groups, interest groups, well-funded groups, in this case, left groups, including George Soros is funding this Amendment 4 in Florida. They draft what they want to add to the state constitution, but that's not actually what the voters see. The voters see a sanitized summary that the interest group gets to draft and put on the ballot. And so when people read that, even some pro-lifers have read it to not recognize how extreme it is. So I think really what needs to be done is to just educate people on the actual stakes of what this is. This is not something that a majority of people would support, certainly not 60% if it was explained accurately. But that's not how it appears on the ballot. You read it on the ballot, and they poll tested these phrases. They focus grouped it. There's an art to how they do this. So we're going to make sure that people know. We obviously need financial support. We need other support to do it. But it would make, we're the #1 state for tourism in the country because we've got nice beaches, great fishing, great theme parks. This would make Florida one of the top abortion tourism states in the entire United States. And so that would go from having legislation that protects unborn when there's a fetal heartbeat, similar to what Iowa has, to basically being an abortion travel destination state. And because this would be in the state constitution, there'd be nothing that the legislature could do to legislate against that.
So how can our audience help? I mean, we all heard some of the recordings that came out when you first launched your presidential campaign, and you had some of your advisors talking to donors and were right away trying to pressure you to moderate on this issue and water it down. And so I don't, is the support right there for you guys right now to defeat this thing? Are you going to have to maybe do this independent of the system because the donor class has given up on this issue and either they're for it or they are running scared because they're believing data that doesn't exist? So, I mean, there's lots of different kinds of people. There are people in this audience can write checks. People in this audience can knock on doors. What is it you guys need?
I think all the above. I mean, I think you're right. I think traditional donor class, this is likely not something they're going to get involved in. Although we do have some people that are very strong pro-life who are supporting in really significant amounts, which is great. Florida is an expensive state to carry a message. It's not something that you can do cheaply, and so that's just something that we're going to have to do. We also have to recognize this is just the reality, not complaining, but this is the reality, is the media will be almost 100% in favor of this amendment in terms of their coverage, their tone. They are not going to help at all present this in a way that is accurate. That's just the nature of it. This is an issue that they are clearly on one side of. So we have to counteract that. So I think people that are willing to write checks is helpful, willing to volunteer, willing to just talk to people that they know in Florida, because I can tell you right now, people aren't really thinking about any of these amendments. We also have one that they're trying to do the marijuana. Like, we have medical marijuana.
Basically, they're trying to Michigan your Florida. They're trying to export Gretchen Whitmer's Michigan to your state, essentially.
Yeah, so they want to basically say, you know, you can take it, smoke it wherever you want on the street, all this other stuff, which should not be good for the state. But nevertheless, so that's there. People aren't really thinking about it yet. So what's going to happen is September, October, that's when the battle will really heat up, I think, in a really big way. And it's just a messaging thing. Now, we need to get 40% plus one to vote no. So I would tell people, because I know that a lot of people were demoralized about what's happened in some of these other states. None of those other states, I believe, have a 60% threshold. I mean, Ohio was a special election. This was the only thing on the ballot, and they still only got about 56%. So they would not have that would not have passed if Ohio had Florida's rules for a supermajority threshold. So this is definitely something that can be defeated. It is very, very extreme. And, you know, it's just like you look at, you know, what kind of society do you want to live in? And there's a lot of strategic disagreements about how do you further a culture of life. There's disagreements about if the federal government or state government or a combination of both. I think those are all healthy debates. But do we really want to live in a country where you can take a perfectly healthy, fully formed late-term baby and just snuff it out and have no legal protections at all for that and let people make a lot of money off doing that? That is not the type of culture, I think, that will ultimately succeed across a wide variety of other fronts. And so, yes, this is, I think Dobbs caught a lot of people flat-footed. I think there was disagreement about how to move forward. I do think that became the scapegoat for the failure of the 2022 midterms, even though you've pointed out the data as it actually is. So there's been a lot of different factors. But here we are now in the nation's third most populous state, a state that has led on every conservative issue under the sun for the last 5.5 years and actually delivered huge victories for the people and huge defeats for the left. I mean, there's not many instances where we're beating the left throughout the country. Here we've done it routinely. And so I think this is an example with Soros funding it, with all these lefty groups getting involved in this. You know, they see this as a way to punch back, and we just can't let that happen.
Amen. Last question on this. You kind of just touched on it, but let's expand on that point more, because this is also going to be a pretty politically savvy audience here at The Blaze. So as you're uniquely qualified to answer this as someone who's pro-life, but also been a candidate, had to deal with some of the realities, both going on and what the future is post-Dobbs, and then also in opposition to the other side as well. You've had to navigate this as a professional politician too, and I mean that, as a guy that this is your vocation. So walk our people here, tuned in right now, Ron, through what the world is like. If you're concerned that we've lost our momentum now, post-Dobbs, what is the world like given the amount of casualties the left has taken in your state since you took over? If they are able to get 60% in your state, in a state that Trump's probably going to win by Florida standards in a presidential election, which is normally anywhere from 2 to 4 points, he's probably going to win it by more than that. I mean, how much of a steep climb do we have as a movement in the Republican Party on November the 6th if that is the result in your state, compared to even how difficult it is now?
Well, think about the 2022 election when I got reelected. Dobbs had happened. I was on record, with the heartbeat bill supporting. We had 300,000 more Republicans than Democrats at that point. That was a big deal at the time because we had never even had more Republicans in any election in Florida history until that one. But even since November of 22, when we won by 20 points, we've netted almost 700,000 more Republicans. And so, yes, we'll have 1 million registered Republican advantage over Democrats. I don't think structurally a Democrat could physically win the state of Florida. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm given those dynamics from the Democrats. But nevertheless, here we are, 1 million Republican, and we shouldn't say that all Republicans are pro-life, because that's not true. And just like all Democrats, voters are not necessarily pro-abortion. Now, increasingly, that's becoming more the case, but there are definitely Democrat voters who are pro-life. So it's not a perfect partisan thing, but you would think that having 1 million voter advantage for Republicans, that just to hold 40% plus one, that should be something that would be doable. And obviously that would be bad for the state if this were added to the Constitution, but it would also have ramifications throughout the country, because think about all the other states where they don't have such a significant Republican advantage, and I think it would just add more fuel to the fire. And so I don't know what it will look like in terms of the National Republican Party in the landscape, but I guarantee you, if you're somebody that cares about creating a culture of life, having this Amendment 4 pass in Florida is definitely going to be detrimental to the efforts all across the country.
Amen. Governor, thank you for joining us. Is there a place you could direct our audience to if they want to get involved in this fight from all over the country? This is maybe the number one spotlight for the pro-life fight in this entire election cycle is this amendment in your state. So where can people go to learn more?
Well, if you go online, they have a group, No on 4. There's a Too Extreme for Florida website people can go on. There's also a variety of other committees that are helping with this, and I think that's something that's encouraging. But you can definitely go on to find the Amendment 4 opposition groups, and we're working. It's a team effort. You know, we've got people of faith, we've got churches, we've got other things out there just to tell the truth. And honestly, Steve, if everyone knows exactly what they're voting for and are very crystal clear about what that is, one, I don't think it could pass. But if at that point it passed, I would not be happy with it. But, you know, people have made their voice heard. My fear is that the message doesn't get out to where when people are going, they're voting for something that is really distorted in how it's been presented. So as long as we have the truth, and everyone can help, door knocking, phone calls, contributions. If we get the truth out there, I really believe that this amendment will fail.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ron. Good to see you, brother.
All right, see ya.
You bet. Take care. All right, guys, what do you think?
Vote no on 4florida.com. Vote no on the number 4florida.com.
Thank you, Aaron, for that. Vote no on 4florida.com, correct? Yep. And the number 4.
It's the number 4.
Yep. Okay.
You can feel tonally that he's not taking this for granted in any way, shape, or form. It's not his manner to do so. It's because he understands how to fight so well that he has so many wins. But you can, I don't know. I thought he was very, very sober about this. And that doing there's nothing absolutely to be taken for granted on this front. You know, again, my suggestion would be, you know, there's something down there in the water. He talks about, you know, the beauty of the beaches. I don't know, but, you know, the good, the true, and the beautiful message, connecting what people, you know, Romans 1 almost, what they cannot help but know, and take that message to the bank. I've said it out loud many times before. I'm not. It seems like a fictional place. I've been to Florida many, many times, but the fact of what he's pulling off down there, I just pray he's got another win in him, because this will be, as you've laid out, Steve, arguably the biggest win of all.
Yes, and this amendment in Florida, it is as much of a service to child sacrifice, which is the number one sacrament driving the Democrat Party. What did I say on Friday? You look at there's a clip in Bleep Lord Nefarious says just about killing babies. That is the essence of the Democrat Party. It is as much about service to that as it is sending a message to the rest of the country. We did this in Ron DeSantis' Florida. you have no power here. That's as much as what it is as it is just servicing the number one sacrament. This is about sending a message. So I pray that there are enough people in Florida who are awake and engaged and understand the stakes on the table here as it comes when it comes to the rest of the country, because that's the number one goal I would contend here. 1A and 1B, you can debate which order they are, but it is, of course, servicing that sacrament, but sending a message as well, because Florida has an advantage that other states that we've seen these types of things go down, Michigan, Ohio, they don't have. They actually have an organized and invested governor. In Ohio, it was Mike DeWine who just gave tepid support at best to a similar amendment last year. Of course, in Michigan, it's Gretchen Whitmer who gave, from the opposite angle, a full-throated and enthusiastic emotional support for similar measures taken there. So Florida has an advantage that those two states did not have. So there's a lot on the table, a lot at stake here, as you said, not only in the presidential election, but this and what it means for the way forward for pro-lifers in this country.
Yep. Let's just be very adult about this, okay? We have no clout in the Republican Party right now. None. Any leverage we have in the Republican Party is from people like the governor of Florida or the governor of our state who are actually personally pro-life, and so they bring conviction with them. Beyond that, we have no ability to leverage anything. It was just 3 or 4 years ago that you at least had to pretend to be pro-life to get elected anything in the Republican Party. Now we don't even have to have it in the platform. We've lost all our leverage. Having a state like Ohio that is more Republican than it's ever been since it came into the Union pass the same bill Michigan did into its constitution just has freaked absolutely everybody out. If you add Florida to that list and you've got a 1 million voter cushion, then people are just going to do math and say, I can't even get... Our own party doesn't agree with your issue. That's why it's not in the platform. It's not even about now what will win and what Democrats will let us get away with. We don't agree with you. You are essentially back to where you were for nearly a decade between Roe v. Wade and when Ronald Reagan got elected president. You've lost all the momentum you once had. It's all gone. There will be generational ramifications to losing that vote in Florida. And it's not even just because of the voter registration advantage, but the 60% threshold on top of that, the cushion that you have. And you can't win, you'll have no clout. We have to win there. So I'd be putting my energy there if I were you and you're pro-life. More in a moment. Well, if you don't have a governor like Ron DeSantis, which is most of America, unfortunately, you definitely want to make sure you're hooked up with our friends at Deace Medical. Just in case, they'd never do that. And you see him do that again. Just in case, that'll never happen here. And you live through it happening here again. All right. Make sure you've got backups of some of the greatest antibiotics we've ever discovered, like amoxicillin, doxycycline, etc. And now you can expand your Deace case as well to the medications that you need to make sure you've got a backup of, or especially a loved one if they're on something like Medicare. They're completely at the mercy of the biomedical fascist state we all just lived through during COVID, that said some drugs went from Nobel Prize to horse paste, just like that. Make sure you've got peace of mind to know you have a backup of what you need when you're going to need it the most. They can do that for you at Deace Medical. Get the Deace case. Use my code DACE at checkout for a discount at jacemedical.com. JASE is how it's spelled. jacemedical.com. Use the code DACE at checkout for the discount at jacemedical.com. So I want to talk about polling here on the way out today and how we're going to handle this moving forward. Because the polls this weekend are all over the place. similar to what they were before June 27th, where each side could pick a poll, could pick a trend that furthered its narrative in any given news cycle. They were everywhere, all over the place. Daniel must have sent me a million texts between when DeSantis dropped out, or when Nikki Haley dropped out to end the primary, and the day before the debate between Biden and Trump, where he is just sending me polling results that don't make any sense or contradicting each other within their own crosstabs, polls that are contradicting themselves on a daily basis. They're all over the place. Okay. So we're kind of back into that realm now. And we're there. And I want to, because this has long been one of our goals of this show, to make you a smarter consumer of content and news and information, because we think that'll make you a better American. All right. So the polling is back to being all over the place now, where if you've got a check mark after your name and you're for Team Red or Team Blue, every day you're going to find a poll now that's going to say something you want it to say. This is for 4 reasons, and I think that I think are important for all of you within the sound of my voice to understand. Number one, that the race is now reset to where it was prior to that debate. When Biden showed 80 million people his dementia could not be hidden from them any longer. Now, and this is where I think the race will be, unless there is a debate between Trump and Kamala, and then 100 million people see this fall that this woman's a total and complete incompetent. Number two, too much of the media right now are doing polls that are a byproduct of driving their narrative, as opposed to obtaining accurate snapshots, which becomes obvious when you look at their crosstabs and their math either doesn't make sense or add up. In fact, let me take you back to 2020. Because you guys know, I have receipts. I keep files on things like this. In 2020, the Real Clear Politics polling average was off by 4.1 points. That's the largest miss in the history of the RCP average, which goes back to 2000. So that means so far this century. It was the first time the RCP average in a presidential election was off outside the margin for error. And you need to understand, for a aggregator to be off outside the margin of error, given the volume of polls that RCP is aggregating, okay? I mean, the Bible says there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel for a reason, okay? You would think larger volumes of information would decrease your margin for error, because various biases would be confronted and weed themselves out and balance out in the end, right? And that's why the RCP average has been within the margin for error. Every presidential election this century until 2020 was the first time it was off outside the margin of error. Why? Well, here are polls included in the RCP average and how far, and these are the polls that were off outside their margin of error in their final poll when they should have the most accurate information. CNN was off by 8.9 points. NPR off by 8.9 points. University of Southern California off by 8.9 points after that was one of the most accurate polls in 2016. Quinnipiac off by 7.9 points, CNBC off by 6.9 points, NBC Wall Street Journal off by 6.9 points, YouGov off by 6.9 points, New York Times Siena off by 5.9 points, Fox News off by 4.9 points, Harris off by 4.9 points, Survey USA off by 4.9 points, USA Today off by 4.9 points, and Reuters off by 3.9. Here are the polls in the RCP average that were within their margins of error, because that's a pretty long list, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 polls in the RCP average off outside their margin of error. Rasmussen was off by 2.1. It was the only poll that overestimated Trump's support in 2020, but it was still more accurate than all the ones we just mentioned. It was also the most accurate of 2016. Emerson off by 1.9 points. Investors Business Daily, the second most accurate poll of 2016, was off by 0.9, and The Hill was off by 0.9, which is a very left-wing publication. Which shows you that left-wing publications can do good polling, Todd, if they want to, right? If they want to, they can. So if you're doing the math at home, kids, or if you're scoring in bed, as Bob Uecker used to say, 13 polls in the RCP average were off outside the margin for error in 2020. only 4 were within their margin for errors. And that's how you end up, kids, with the worst RCP average of all time. They're that far off. The final national polls, by average, underestimated Trump's support. The incumbent president with the most name ID of any presidential candidate in American history, and they underestimated his support by almost 5 points. It was 4.8 points. Which means they were just fundamentally flawed the entire time. The 2 worst states, 2 cycles in a row, 2016 and 2020, the battleground states where the polling was the worst, Ohio, way underestimated Trump support both presidential elections, and Wisconsin way overestimated the Democratic support in both elections. One of those states kind of important this time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't polling. This is narrative reinforcement. This is narrative casting. This is a result in search of a poll, not a poll in search of a result. They're this bad at this on purpose. That's number 2. Number 3, even if you are trying to do good polling in this era, even if you're trying to, it is harder than ever to get people to respond to them. And the polls clearly still haven't caught up with the Democrat ballot harvesting scheme. Remember, they outperformed either the polls or the demographics in all of the off-year midterm elections from 2022 and since by an average of 9 points. So even if you're trying to do it right, it's hard. Number 4, and I maybe should have made this number 1. We're in a spiritual war here. You are seeing wars in the heavenlies, in the unseen realm now playing out for eyes to see on the political landscape. And the spirit of the age, the forces of darkness, thrive in confusion. They love it. It's where they do their best work. And so that means they're going to spread it whenever they can, and clarity is going to be difficult to achieve or to obtain. I couldn't make up my mind whether to say obtain or achieve, so I said achieve. Okay? Clarity is going to be hard to get. Let's go with that. All right. So we're gonna analyze polling more than we have been on this show. The rest of this election, it's not going to be a regular staple of the show. But since it's very clear much of this will be done as a psyop, we need to analyze them much more for how they came to the math they came to. Like, they have produced polls showing Kamala tied with Trump, but Trump getting over 40% of Hispanic votes. It is very possible that Kamala could be tied with Trump. It is very possible that Trump may get more than 40% of Hispanic votes. Do you know what is not possible? It's possible neither of those things occurs. You know what's not possible? For Kamala to be tied with Trump while he's getting over 40% of the Hispanic vote. That is not possible. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing that. We're not going to be sitting here, doing sports talk radio. I think we're going to win, guys. Okay? We're not going to do the, come on, guys, Goonies version of polling analysis. Okay? Not going to do that. Okay? We are, though, going to be in search of BS and psyops that just don't make any sense. And that brings us to the trusty poll jar. It won't be here when you tune in tomorrow. I'm going to take Todd's suggestion. We're going to retire it. I know several of you agreed to match whatever was in there when we got finished with this as a donation to Preborn. We counted it. There's $340 in there right now, counting Aaron's IOU. $340. So, Aaron, I'm just trusting you to remember how much it is of that you still owe.
50.
Okay. $50. Okay. So there's $340. You guys want to make a matching gift of $340 to Preborn? I'm sure they would appreciate it. At about $28, or an ultrasound. That would be, if you made that donation, at least 10 of those, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually at least 11 of them. So that could save a lot of kids right then and there. So I'll be writing out the check on behalf of the show. If you want to make a donation to preborn, the matching what's in the jar, $340 is what's in the jar. But it's now very clear with how they're producing these gaslit results this instantly, when they've barely even, they're just now escalating what is to come between now and the first debate, whenever that takes place. It's very clear these are going to be used as COVID level psyops. And to be brutally honest with you, I'm one of the few people working in this industry that has the qualifications to debunk and deconstruct these things. So other people have different skill sets and gifts, right? Okay. This is one of mine, so I'm going to do it. Because this is you know what, right up in here, right? And it needs to be deconstructed. Especially because so much of what we do is a reaction to these things, as opposed to proactively looking to, I'm not arguing to ignore them. I think that's a false choice between ignoring them and accepting them. To me, you put people up as your candidates who can change them, who can make them say different things that they don't want to say, but they've so changed the zeitgeist they can't. It's unavoidable. We're not doing that right now, outside of a few places like Florida. Holistically, what we're doing is we're running in fear from them. We are frankly masturbating to them when they tell us what we want for limited periods of time, and then we are allowing them to emasculate us when they don't. As opposed to, we're just going to change them. We're going to make them say what we want, because we're just going to be that damn good at this. And if we're not that good at it, we're at least going to be that damn persistent. All right, guys, what do you think?
Yeah, this is really important. The message has to blow up the psyop. Right now, the psyop is constantly blowing up the message. We got to absolutely change that paradigm. I believed in it so much, I made this suggestion last week because I believe that Steve does have to lean into this part of his skill set, but I believe it even more. If you see what's going on this weekend and today, the news breaking about how Meta and ChatGPT, you try to look up, as Aaron said in the montage, you just try to look up something about the assassination, it won't pull it up. The famous picture of Trump, it's calling it fiction. Think of the polls that way. They're just flat out trying to manipulate you, gaslight you, and I think it's almost like it's like Steve said, nefarious in his book. We know that you know that I know, but we just don't think you can stop yourself now.
We should do it anyway.
We're going to find out right here in the next couple months if we are capable of being citizens and putting an end to this.
Aaron, I'm going to give you the last word in a minute after we talk about Lassie Health. They came on board the show last week, and with the escalating cost of healthcare and insurance, with basically everything else, this could be the solution that you're looking for. It's not health insurance. It's access to healthcare that comes without all the red tape, restrictions, inflated costs, and coverage plans start as low as $30 a month. You get transparent pricing, comprehensive coverage tailored to your needs, access to healthcare services without breaking the bank. There are no annual or lifetime caps on services. You can start at a plan at any time. Again, for as low as $30 a month, you can get over 400 prescription medications for free unlimited virtual mental health counseling, free 24/7 virtual urgent care, lab tests for up to 60% off, imaging tests for up to 75% off, procedures and surgeries over 50% off. And again, folks, that's their entry-level program at about $30 a month. All right. So you can just see already, if you go further up, that Lassie Health is a game changer. So you can check out affordable plans that puts you in control of your healthcare at healthylink.com/Steve. That's healthylink.com/Steve. For a limited time, get your first month for free. That's up to $100 off eligible plans so that you can get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/Steve. That's healthylink.com/Steve.
So what was the first thing I told you when you told me on Thursday that you're getting rid of the poll jar? I was like, I'm still not going to do like what I did, just full transparency. In the lead up to the 2022 midterms, I was doing like a poll update every other montage. Not going to do that this time around. You know, I was of the mind, keep donating to preborn and don't let that stop you. You should keep doing that. But I think at the end of the day, there's math going on here. Some of it is transgendered math, 2 plus 2 equals 5. And some of it is actual math. Now, that actual math might be faulty, built on faulty premises, I should say. I think we're probably doing ourselves and you a disservice if when we see viral polls go around, if we don't use our God-given ability to make heads or tails of it. And sometimes there are no heads. Sometimes there are no tails. Like I said, sometimes the math is going to be transgendered. But I think we're doing a disservice by completely jettisoning ourselves from that. So, we're not going to obsess over them, but at the same time, we're not going to completely eject either. And I'm cool with that.
Indeed. It's very clear based on how quickly they produced these turnaround polls when they were just in the opening salvos of their charm offensive, that this is going to be a key component in the PSYOP. Because here's why. They need to make Kamala Harris, she hasn't passed the test of being a credible president. And so if it seems like she could win, that helps with her credibility gap that she can't probably do on her own in terms of articulation of the issues. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that's why we can't let them get away with that. Romans 8:28.